This week's episode of the Slash Filmcast is brought to you by Bonnaroo.co.uk, the State Department of Fashion Corrections, where you can find a wide range of movie and TV tribute t-shirts including Farmington Barn, Cuddy's Boxing Gym, and Quint's Great White Fishing Trips, to name a few. All t-shirts are available in sizes up to 5XL, and American customers can use a special promo code FILMCAST for free shipping on their orders. Again, that's Bonnaroo, Bonaroo.co.
That's how I got the name Tobolas, so I got named the same way Don Corleone got named in The Godfather.
Nice. So
that's my connection to filmdom.
So you don't actually know what your last name was?
I kind of know, and it was lost to history. So, but I am Tobolowsky, based on the town in Russia outside of Moscow called Tobolsk, but the family name, whatever that was, got lost on the way over.
Got it. So Tobolowsky, although I would say that if you don't know what the real name is, then we should theoretically just be able to say whatever the hell we want, right?
Anything you want. Yeah. Brad Pitt, go for it. I'll sign those checks for a while.
But in any case, if you're just tuning in for the first time, you should know that the Slash Filmcast is the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. We typically broadcast live on Monday nights at SlashFilm.com/live. We typically begin each episode by discussing what we've been watching, move on into a dissection of the week's film news, and conclude with one in-depth review. This week we'll be reviewing Where the Wild Things Are, the new film by Spike Jonze. You can find all of our back episodes at slashfilmcast.com, and you can email us always and let us know what you think of the show at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. So I guess let's get right into the show then. This week, what we've been watching, I watched a film called Law Abiding Citizen. Now, this is a film directed by F. Gary Gray, starring Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx plays the district attorney who's trying to keep up his high conviction rate, and Gerard Butler plays the wronged sort of father who goes on a rampage following a sort of plea bargain that Jamie Foxx has made with the criminal that has killed his family. And this all happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie, so not really a spoiler.
Like the first 3 minutes of the movie. It's like, the movie opens and his family dies.
Yeah, so I thought this movie is pretty unique, in my opinion. I actually went in expecting generic action flick, and, much like F. Gary Gray has done in the past. And I actually am a fan of, not necessarily a fan, but at least I enjoyed movies like The Italian Job, and certainly The Negotiator.
Yeah, definitely. Even watching the trailer of this movie, you get a real Negotiator vibe.
Yes, although if you haven't seen the movie, I would suggest you don't watch the trailer, because it does give away a lot of cool money shots. But, yeah, I mean, you get a Negotiator vibe. I mean, he's very much into these whole movies of guy within the law going against guy outside of the law, two male characters sort of playing off each other, and this movie certainly fulfills that kind of MO for F. Gary Gray. But what I liked about this movie is that it takes every single convention of action movies that you think could possibly happen, and it kind of one-ups it, right? The explosion, like you think an explosion is going to happen at a certain time during the movie, but it's like 5 times as big as the explosion you'd expect for some reason. That's essentially sums up the whole movie, and it also plays with the idea of like who you're rooting for, because at the beginning you root for Gerard Butler. You're like, oh yeah, he's going after the guys that killed his family. But then as Gerard Butler's journey progresses, you kind of start feeling, I don't know if this is the good guy anymore. And
yeah.
I don't think it's more of a transition. It kind of just happens instantaneously. It's like at a certain point you're like, okay, this guy's nuts.
Yeah, there's one scene that's just like, it's a huge transition for him.
Yeah, and that's true. But at the same time, it's also like this movie is so insane. It feels like what happened was, these guys sat around a writing table and thought of cool things that could happen, and then wrote in stuff to justify why those cool things could happen. And as a result, the movie is not a great movie, but it is really fun.
It's about the set pieces, basically.
Yeah, it's all about the set pieces, and it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, and it's not really trying to be a good movie, I don't think. It knows what it is. It's a trashy B-movie thriller, and as that, it's incredibly entertaining.
Yeah.
But also, I would say above average trashy B-movie thriller. Like, it's not, because it's so audacious in, there's some scenes of violence and gore and explosions that are just like, you think, you're in the back of your mind, there's several times in the movie when in the back of my mind, I'm like, are they going to show that? And I was like, no, they couldn't possibly show that. And then they actually showed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's a lot of stuff like that throughout the whole film that I think at least merits one watch.
I mean, yeah, especially for people who like sort of like trashy action movies or thrillers. The movie has a lot to offer. I was really surprised at how it was getting a lot of terrible reviews. Like
it has a 24% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I want to quote what it actually says in the consensus. It says, unnecessarily violent and unflinchingly absurd.
Yeah,
which I find hilarious because like that's exactly the reason why this movie's awesome.
Yeah.
Is because it takes things that far. And David, I want to go off what you said. You said that it defies the cliches of the genre.
I wouldn't say it defies.
This movie follows the standard arc of all movies like this. But yes, like you said, it just takes things like way further than it has to.
Yes.
And that's what makes it so entertaining.
It doesn't defy the cliches. I'm sorry, go ahead, Devindra.
There are several scenes where it at least shows us something a little new, which I always appreciate, especially for it's a genre that I feel has gotten kind of stale lately, especially for somebody like F. Gary Gray, who I don't think has made a really good movie since The Negotiator. I didn't really like The Italian Job. So
yeah, it really follows things to their logical extreme, right? Mm-hmm. Like whatever you think is going to happen, it's that cubed. And I wish we could give away some of the best scenes in the movie, but we're not going to because you just go check it out. So yeah,
I have an odd question.
Go ahead, Stephen.
I haven't seen this movie yet, and I do want to see it. Do they have any shots of Gerard Butler's abs in it?
Oh, yes.
I think they do. Actually, I think I'm going to give something away that you see in the trailer, okay? So if you don't want to be, if you don't want to be spoiled for something that's in the trailer, then please tune out for the next couple of seconds. But essentially, Gerard Butler goes off and kills the dudes that were responsible for killing his family, right? And
sure.
And there's a scene where he sort of knows that the police are coming to get him, so he completely strips naked for when the police are coming to arrest him. And at that point, he shows his abs and I believe his ass at some point.
Yeah, everything. There's like a really weirdly, dramatically shot scene. I'm not sure why he got naked.
Yeah, actually, see, my explanation for why he got naked is because like his sort of what he wanted to do, what he wanted to accomplish during the course of the movie depended on him, not getting shot and killed during the arrest. Right, so if he's just completely naked, there's no way anyone could be like, oh, he reached for a gun. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, well, he's completely naked. He's obviously harmless. We cannot do anything to him.
Yeah, there's that shock value. The suspect is naked.
Yeah.
What to do?
My interpretation of that scene was a little bit different. I thought it was that, hey, look, we have Gerard Butler in this movie. Let's get him naked.
Well, I heard that in the 300 that his abs were CGI'd in. and that they could do that with anybody now, and I was thinking of it for myself, it may be my next screen appearance that I could put in a pitch to like CGI those abs in and not have to really do all the setups. Brendan Fraser, when he did the movie that we all liked, The Mummy 3, that movie that I think we all reviewed that nicely, is that Brendan Fraser, he had to do abs for weeks and weeks in preparation of the one scene in The Mummy 3 where he shows his stomach.
Wow.
It's true.
One example I can think of where this happened is actually Ray Winstone in Beowulf. Mm-hmm. Of course, Winstone is not exactly the most built individual, but because
everyone was CG'd in Beowulf.
Yeah, he was motion captured in that movie, so they were able to CG in whatever abs they wanted.
You know what, Dave? In fact, that's a terrible example. What are you talking about?
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's kind of a costly procedure, Stephen. I don't think you should. I don't think you should count on that.
I guess there hasn't been a huge demand for me to be without my shirt in a while.
Yeah. So I won't worry about it. Talk to Zemeckis, Stephen. He'll get you into something.
Okay. Just checking. Okay.
So, law-abiding citizen, I'd say if you watch the first 30 seconds of the trailer and you like it, don't watch the rest of the trailer. Just go out and watch this movie because it is unique, and it's. I don't think it's something you've. Certainly not something we've seen this year. Although, I just say it's definitely worth your time.
It's definitely not perfect. It's full of plot holes, especially towards the end. But you'll have fun with it.
Yeah,
it really kind of makes no sense whatsoever. Actually,
Yeah.
when you think back on any scene in the film, it's like you can probably find something about it that is completely illogical. But it does have a lot of just some of the surprise kills in this movie are kind of hilarious, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It's just incredibly entertaining. And Gerard Butler is a really likable villain. He's got the charm, and he says the one-liners with a pretty good enthusiasm for the dialogue. And this is from the script's written by Kurt Wimmer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who did Equilibrium. So
Yes.
it's got going for that as well.
Kurt Wimmer also did Ultraviolet and Street Kings. So
Yeah.
But let's not mention this.
And it's interesting to note that Frank Darabont was actually supposed to direct this film, but left the production midway.
I wonder
through.
why.
Yeah, I don't.
It would have been a very different movie.
Yeah, definitely. But I do appreciate the gusto with which F. Gary Gray he was just all out with everything. So anyway,
I hope this is the beginning of something good for him because you know what? In this movie, he showed off some pretty decent. Some scenes were really well executed. I thought.
I think he's always been a pretty solid action director. So, yeah.
It's just something's been missing, especially Italian Job. There was something missing in that movie, aside from, Jason Statham and stuff.
Before we move on, I was just curious about what you guys thought of the ending.
It was definitely absurd. I mean, it
didn't seem
you guys weren't
like
let down.
We may have to go into spoilers to talk about it.
Yeah, let's save it. Let's save it for the After Dark. Save it for the
Yeah.
After Dark.
Okay.
And we'll do it right at the end of the After Dark, so people can tune out. Stephen, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say the irritating thing about the Italian Job is a kind of thing that they've started to do in movies like about 10 years ago, and that is that the guy with the computer is always a genius. And he can do anything. I mean, you were saying before the show, David. Your computer's dying. I have trouble getting a calendar up on my computer, but these guys always in these movies can change the passwords of banks, and they change the satellite in space, and now we're going to turn off the security system, and and it's always somebody that looks kind of stupid. Who's the computer guy?
Are you implying that
Seth Green would take offense to
are you
that.
implying Seth Green doesn't look extremely intelligent?
Right. That's it. That Seth Green, in that movie, he was Mr. Computer Guy. I'll tell you, who does it? It was that Die Hard 4. There, everybody was the computer guys.
Yes,
that's true.
That was the
Even the
logical extension of the computer guy who could do anything.
Yeah.
Let's
really
really
implode the internet.
Yeah, it's really irritating.
Well, you're gonna love Law Abiding Citizen then.
So this week, I also happened to watch a TV show that happens to be on TV right now.
Buckle up, Ohio. Are you ready for a new musical sensation? You'd better be, because here come the Acapellas.
Oh, congratulations on your Dead Tree Valentine, gentlemen. By the way, I want in. Stop right there, William. I've got 2 words for you. Josh Groban. He's coming to the PTA event.
Who is Josh Groban?
Who is Josh Groban? Kill yourself! He is an angel sent from heaven to deliver platinum records unto us. And if he were here right now, I would club you to death with his Critics' Choice Award.
Why would he come to our show?
Because I invited him. Josh and I have become frequent pen pals since he accidentally friended me on MySpace. And being my close personal confidant, he is only interested if I am in the group.
No, Sandy. We have standards.
Okay, fine. But just so you know, the blogs are all the Twitter. They say he's looking for an opening act.
That was, of course, audio from the show Glee, created by Ryan Murphy and starring our guest today, Stephen Tobolowsky. I saw episodes 2 and 3 of Glee, and I gotta say, I still really enjoy the show. And I love that it makes singing in choir cool for America, and that's what I love.
I think Ryan was when he was a kid, he was kind of a nerd, but he was in choir. In fact, a lot of the Ian Bannon, the other executive producer too, he was in choir too. So I think a lot of these guys were in choir and or show choir, glee clubs, and they wanted to make it like a tribute to their own past.
Yeah, I'm impressed with sort of the. Obviously, the musical numbers and the performances are great, and I'm more impressed, like in the back of my mind, like with the business side of how they were able to get like the rights for all those songs, and obviously they're also selling the covers on iTunes, and hopefully the original performances from the episodes we see will be preserved for the DVD too. I can't imagine they left that part out of the contract.
I think the way it works, and I could be incorrect, but this is what I heard on the set. We shoot over a Paramount, and we've taken over 3 or 4 sound stages over a Paramount, and all of the music comes from the Paramount library. Even though the show is produced by Fox, it's in conjunction with Paramount, and part of the production deal is I think Paramount gets a slice of the music.
Wow.
So I think everybody has a hat in the ring when it comes to the music. And with the kind of I have never been on a show with this kind of talent. And I mean, it is like powerhouse talent. You were talking, David, about Leah Michele?
Yes, who you said you promised you'd pass her my phone number for me, right?
I will pass the phone number to her. I promise you. I promise you I will do that.
Yes, tell us about Leah Michele.
The wonderful thing is I could sit, there's one scene where I'm sitting in the audience watching her audition, Rachel's audition, and Leah comes out and sings this song, and I hear the whole song. I get to hear the whole song without edits, and it's magnificent. When you have any of these people, Matthew Morrison or Leah Michele, when you have them singing live in front of you, it's stunning because, they're Broadway's A-team. And that's the amazing thing about this show. Like the choreographers did the movie Hairspray, everything is the A-team in terms of the music, and these people are fantastic.
Actually, let me ask you this question. Did you do the vocals for that song that you did do you do all your vocals?
Absolutely. And but of course, I do very few of them. We did the, tick-tock, you don't stop.
Yes.
And then all I do are the ooh-oohs. Ooh, and then he goes, well, can you just do ooh, ooh, but Matthew and those other guys, they're doing all the singing. But, one of the difficult things, we rehearsed that dance number for 2 weeks, before we shot it. And it's very difficult doing that 5-man a cappella thing because you never know what the guy next to you is doing. And, and they have me on the end. So like Patrick Gallagher is like next to me at the end. He's the coach. And so you really don't know what's going on next to you. I'm not near any of the good dancers.
That's
I'm
hard.
like, if you were to see the Solar System, like Matt Morrison, who is a real dancer and Broadway star and singer, he's kind of on the other end. And I'm like Saturn or Uranus or Neptune. I'm one of the ice giants far away from the sun. We rehearsed that number for 2 weeks, and I thought, man, just suck it up. You could do it. You could do this number. And, you have to – we danced our little hearts out for about 2-3 hours shooting that I Just Want to Sex You Up song. And at the end of it, they said, Stephen, do you want to see some of the footage? Because it's all on high def. It's all digital. You could see it right then and there. And I went and looked, and they put the angle of the camera that was just kind of on me and Patrick at that end of the line. And I know you guys, being films aficionados, remember The Bride of Frankenstein, where Elsa Lanchester comes to life, and then the Frankenstein monster goes, "Woman, you're bad. We should be dead." And I'm looking at my dancing performance, and I'm just being like objective, like an audience member would be. I looked like the Frankenstein monster in the big lambskin vest with me dancing at the end. It was terrifying. And Ryan came by and looked and said, see, look, it's hilarious. So I think they have the other guys there for the talent, and they have me there for the comedy relief on the end of the line.
Oh, well, come on, Stephen. I mean, I think you did a fine job in that scene, so...
Yeah. There was one scene, getting back to Leah Michele, there was one scene where she was doing a song from Cabaret, and they wanted me, and the script was very, very funny, and so they said, can you make her cry? Can you make Leah cry for real? And I couldn't think of anything to say to insult her enough to make her cry. And it was so pathetic. I was just yelling like, your thighs are fat, your thighs are fat. It was terrible. And she was looking at me like I was speaking some other language and didn't understand what I was saying. And then I think she went back in the corner and stared into a bright light so she could cry. And then she came back and did the same.
You should have given her my phone number and a photo and said, this is as good as you'll ever do. I think
this is your blind date.
That would have done the trick, I think. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, this is a story I've told before. I don't think I told you guys. But when I auditioned, last time we spoke, I had an accident.
Yes.
I had the fatal accident. I had the broken neck. And it would have been fatal, except that I had arthritis in my neck, and it kept me from dying. So I had this huge neck brace on, where we shot the end of Heroes, where they called me up and said, we need to reshoot your death. And I said, guys, I have the broken neck. And they said, well, how can we shoot around it? It's a broken neck. It's so hard to shoot around a broken neck. But anyway, I had not auditioned for months, and I got this Glee audition. And so I have the neck brace on, and I went over for the audition. My wife drove me over there, and I'm debating whether I should audition with or without the neck brace. And I mean, a lot of actors are just worried about whether they're going to forget their lines. Me, I was debating on the political correctness of going in with the neck brace and auditioning or not. So I thought, well, I didn't want to go in with the neck brace because then I probably wouldn't get the part. And I didn't want to go in without the neck brace because then I thought it could be construed that I was being dishonest with the producers and letting them know I had an injury. So I went in with the neck brace and then took it off in the audition and told them, this is the first time I've taken this neck brace off now for 3.5 months, and I haven't auditioned, so I'm going to try to do it now. And I took the Velcro off the neck brace, and the look on the producer's face, it was like I told him I just had herpes. It's not like, it is not a good comedy situation. If there are any young actors out there listening to this, don't go in and tell the producers that you have something heinously wrong with you. So I went in and took the neck brace off, and it was all fine. Everything was great. Everything worked fine. The audition went well, and I couldn't believe the good fortune in that I got the part.
Nice.
Just great group of people.
I was looking at your IMDb page, Stephen, and I think it says here, let me see here, it says, trademark, under your bio page, he usually plays annoying businessmen types that the heroes or villains loathe to deal with.
Hey, don't believe that stuff. You can't believe that stuff there. I looked on the internet. I typed in Stephen Tobolowsky. I Googled myself. And, it was a big choice. Also, like, do you want to Google yourself? I Googled myself, and I read what people wrote about me. There was one article that said the bear-like Stephen Tobolowsky. There was another one, the ostrich-like Stephen Tobolowsky. There was another one that said the tall, lanky, bald Texan. There was another one that said the pudgy, pasty, white Texan. They say so many different things about me, so you can't believe that annoying businessman thing.
Okay, I was just going to say I didn't, because it struck me that you it actually does fit your description for the Glee show, but if I can't trust it, then I'll trust it instead.
That's true. I guess I am. I guess I am pretty annoying in that. Yeah, the kind of singing pedophile thing hasn't been done a lot on TV, but I'm ready to make a mark with it if a mark is to be made. Excellent. One last thing I want to mention before we move on to what you've been watching, or actually what Devindra's been watching this week, is you've recently been in the Time Traveler's Wife, right? That is correct. Yes,
you shot that a couple years ago. And I think this makes it your third time-traveling related love story movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Philadelphia Experiment.
Yes, and Groundhog Day.
Groundhog's Day, that's time-traveling in a way. This is definitely time-traveling in a way. I find it always... You know what I found out about Groundhog's Day? That there was a whole section of the script that gave the rationale for time freezing.
Oh, interesting.
That there was a whole scene, a couple of scenes, that set the logic as to how the time got stuck. And Harold Ramis cut that out of the movie. Thank God.
Yeah.
And why is it in time-traveling movies they always feel the importance that we have to come up with this rationale as to how this happens?
Mm-hmm.
In Time Traveler's Wife, it was a disease, right? He had a kind of epilepsy of some sort.
I think you would know more than us because you were in the movie.
Yes, I think he had a disease and it made him travel back and forth through time. But I got to tell you, I mean, there are perks to doing different projects. There are a lot of perks to Glee. I get a lot of 12 and 13-year-old girls that want my autograph. And the perks for being in Time Traveler's Wife is that there is a group of romantic middle-aged women that adore me, one of which was a baggage handler for Delta. And I arrived at an airport, and the woman who was assisting with the baggage looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears. And she came up to me and she said, "You're Dr. Kendrick from Time Traveler, aren't you?" And I go, "Yes, ma'am." And she says, "Let me go down and get your bags." And she went down in the basement of the airport and got my golf clubs.
Wow.
So
That's
there's
power.
Perks.
That's power right there.
That's power. Power at the airport.
So Devindra Hardor, what have you been watching this week?
So this weekend, it got really cold in New York all of a sudden. So I kind of just wanted to stay home, and I ended up watching a lot of movies. But the one I wanted to talk about is Inside Man, Spike Lee's 2006 movie starring Clive Owen and Jodie Foster, Denzel Washington. And I've seen this movie before. I don't remember if we've ever really talked about it. But you know what? Every time I watch this movie, I just gain a further appreciation for it. It's such a great bank robbery movie. And Clive Owen's character is such a very different, stick-up villain. I just love the way they totally rework the whole bank heist type film. They even reference Dog Day Afternoon in this. And if you make a bank robbery movie in New York, you're going to be compared against that. So I just want to say, if anyone out there has not seen this movie, definitely give it a shot. It's his most mainstream film. I think actually one of his most successful too because of that. And it doesn't have any overt political allegories within it, but I also found it really brilliant how he sort of with all the different characters, all the different New Yorkers in the film, he's able to just he does some really interesting multicultural statements on New York.
I thought that's part of the movie was the weakest and very distracting.
I totally agree.
Yeah, like it really didn't need it. It was like you said, very mainstream,
right.
Sort of crowd pleaser, and then he injects this kind of racial, social commentary.
It didn't feel that like forced to me. Maybe if the film was a little longer or something. But you know what? After I've been getting used to living in New York, and it is a very different experience than living anywhere else. And I think the movie just sort of captures it with like this random hodgepodge of like different languages and different cultures all around. So
I like that part, except when he's like explicitly addressing it. Like
there's only like there's like one scene which is maybe the Sikh bank teller when the cops took his turban. That was a little too much.
Yeah, that scene's really distracting. That's what I'm talking about. Right?
That's one scene. That's the only like.
Yeah, but
really
it's unnecessary
scene.
that Spike Lee like injects his own like political agenda into a film that really doesn't need it at all, and it doesn't aid the film in any way.
I don't agree with that either, because the film's really it seems like the film is actually more about New York than it is specifically this bank heist. So it's like it is exactly what you would expect if you gave Spike Lee a bank heist film, you know? So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly really enjoyed the movie. I mean, one of my favorite scenes from the entire film is the beginning of it, when he's sort of setting up the bank robbery. He gets everyone down into the basement, and then the part when he goes through the phones, that was awesome. Mm-hmm. When there was a guy, and this is minor spoiler, but it's from the beginning of the movie. He's like, oh, the manager, right? The manager doesn't give up his phone. And so Clive Owen's like, yo, where's your phone? And he's like, oh, I didn't bring it with me today to work. And then Clive Owen's not just like, oh, yeah, okay, I believe you. He actually goes to like the bag of phones and then picks out like random people's phones until he finds one that has the dude's number on it, and then starts calling it. And that's when,
it's in his office.
And it's in the dude's office, and then the dude just like starts freaking out because he thinks Clive Owen's going to kill him. Mm-hmm. That scene was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead, Stephen.
I thought it was a terrific movie. I really enjoyed that a lot. One thing I recognized that I liked about it was it had a great Act 3.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah,
a lot of times these heist movies, they they had to have gone into it with the Act 3.
Right.
But this one felt so full and complete that I went like, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Like, there is basically, in the second act, like, everything is sort of resolved related to the heist itself, but there's a lot of stuff the film covers related to, like, somebody's secret bank box and all these different little mysteries. And it's just, it felt really, like, I sort of loved that part of the movie, too, just as much as the actual bank robbery itself.
Yeah, and it's very much of the sort of like really well planned, well orchestrated bank heist movie, like Ocean's 11 or something like that, where like every detail is planned for, and very much opposed to sort of the rough and tumble type bank robbery movie, like Point Break, for example. Where the bank robberies aren't exactly as well planned as they could have been,
and
and so if you like that type of movie where everything's planned to a T and the guy on the screen is smarter than you are, then you'll really enjoy Inside Man.
And specifically compared to Dog Day Afternoon, which was, they sort of played the fact that they had no idea what they were doing for much of that movie.
Yeah.
They play up the amateurishness of that. In this film, there is none of that. Like, everything is clear. And it's clear that they know exactly what they're doing. And honestly, that's a really compelling aspect of Clive Owen's character, too, just because he acts like he's smarter than everyone else. But you know what? It turns out he sort of is. So, yeah. It's really well written.
Yep. All right, moving on. Stephen Tobolowsky, what have you been watching this week?
Well, this week I watched once again. We might as well stick with the Clive Owens thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Children of Men.
Yes.
And I have seen this movie now a dozen times, and every time I see it, I am stunned as to not only is it great filmmaking, but I keep missing things in there, and I keep seeing new things every time I see it. I'm amazed at the camera shots. I'm amazed at the music and lack of it. I'm amazed at the incredible suspense they get from wide shots, which is very much, one of the things Hitchcock went into with North by Northwest. At the very first production meeting of North by Northwest, he said, I want the suspense scenes to happen in daylight, and I want them to happen in wide shots. And then from that scene came up the idea of course, Cary Grant with the airplane in the fields. The same thing with Children of Men. So much of the suspense happens in wide shots in broad daylight, and it's gut-churning. I mean, it's a fantastic film.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think if you say you've seen it a dozen times, I could definitely say I'm probably around that count. Have you seen it in high def, Stephen?
I'm wondering if I'm seeing it in high def now. I'm wondering.
Do you have the Blu-ray?
Yeah, is it on
DVD?
Blu-ray?
Any of those?
I was watching it on HBO HD.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
that's probably high def. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty high def. Yeah, this movie I paid back when HD DVD was alive. I paid $30 for it because it was like the best HD DVD that was ever produced. That and like Transformers. But I definitely agree. Like every time you see this movie, so many things in the background. Like initially, I didn't really catch how different. Like there's one scene where he's taking a car ride to visit a family member who's obviously much richer than he is, and I didn't really catch like all the different things that like show the class difference as he drives into this sort of enclosed area. There are like zebras in the park and everyone's sort of happy, but there are also smaller things like there's a point where the rebels or whatever, the Clive Owen, that they kidnapped him.
Yes.
After they let him go, they just throw change on the floor and they're like, here's some bus money, and they drive away. But in this movie, he looks at it and he picks it up because he needs that bus money.
Yeah. And also you were talking about the shots, Stephen. I mean, they developed the special camera rig to fit inside a car. And to sort of rotate and pan around as well.
Wow.
Those like long continuous shots that take place inside the car are really unique. Like you haven't. I don't remember anything else like that because, they developed it specifically for this movie. So
I noticed this time watching it, for example, the buses, and I didn't notice before. The buses have mesh wire on the windows.
Yep.
On the outside of the windows. I didn't notice before all of the commercials for the suicide medicine that are playing nonstop in the street, in the bus terminals, on television. They have all of these, and they're well-produced, well-edited commercials. They're beautifully made commercials. And it's like, wow, just too much.
Indeed, so definitely worth everyone's time. And the HD DVD has dropped to, I think, around $4. So if you have that, you should pick that up.
Honestly, it is still a great platform because I'm getting all these movies for like $3 now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Steven, anything else you've been watching this week?
I certainly saw Where the Wild Things Are.
Yes, and we'll be talking about that in a bit.
We'll talk about that in a second. But I also saw, again, 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And I began to, when I put it in context with Where the Wild Things Are, it started my mind working as to how really unique those three movies were. 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, and Sarah Marshall, which we've all seen like 100 times. But these films are very sneaky movies in that these seem to be some of the first really adult movies that are made for adults, and they do it by cloaking them as kid movies. All the adult movies, and I realize most of the adult movies are made to look like kid movies nowadays. And they make most of the kid movies to look like adult movies. It's this kind of strange thing that our culture has done now, but these films are disguised to look like the regular adult movies, i.e. kid movies, but they actually tackle mature themes in a very sneaky way, a very kind of, in the background. It's a knocked up, starts off being like a gross out movie, typical idiotic flick, but it really is a serious movie about abortion and babies and life. It's incredibly serious movie. And I was wondering, and we could talk about it more and where the wild things go. Do you guys feel like I feel that there has been this enormous push to make children movies for adults and adult movies for children?
When you say children's movies for adults, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, you could take a look at the entire Marvel comic book thing. Obviously, these are a broad spectrum of film, but this is what they want to sell as adult entertainment too, not just kid movies. All the Marvel comic book, all the video game movies, all that stuff. I know that is a category that's for teenagers and kids and grown-ups too. But there seem to be very few children of men, adult movies for adults.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons for that is because, well, first of all, I kind of agree with your premise in the sense that I think that, adult movies, movies that one would consider adults, for adults, are sometimes marketed or advertised in a way that makes them appealing to children, and vice versa. If you look at the advertisements for, I think what you're saying is if you look at the advertisements for like Forgetting Sarah Marshall or 40-Year-Old Virgin, right? Like,
yeah,
that they seem like sort of screwball comedies. Is that what you're saying, as opposed to?
Screwball comedies, with the humor that aims for the lowest, like beneath the adult level, like
right.
The teen to college crowds.
Yeah, the recent Sandra Bullock movie or any recent Will Ferrell movie. The ideas they aim for, like this is dopey comedy, like we're going to tackle everything in the dopiest possible way, like this is really stupid slacker stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And things like 40-Year-Old Virgin pretend to be that way. And they come across at the beginning to be that way. But it's a total subterfuge. It's not that way at all.
Right. And I would agree that definitely sort of the way they're kind of advertised, it does kind of lend itself to this weird positioning in terms of who the target audience is. I also think that the reason why we're not seeing more adult movies for adults is that they don't make that much money anymore, unfortunately. We've seen movies. Universal has done a lot of adult targeted movies like State of Play and Duplicity, and they haven't done very well, And that's unfortunate because we in the Slash Filmcast really enjoyed State of Play, and some of us enjoyed Duplicity, and yeah, it's just sad to see that it just doesn't, at this point, it's not bringing out the crowds necessary to make it like a financially viable enterprise. So, whether that remains that way remains to be seen, but yeah.
I mean, especially these particular films, they all come from Judd Apatow, and
right.
he's always had like a very interesting. Actually, funny you bring this up because he did Freaks and Geeks, which was ostensibly a teenager show or a kids show almost sometimes, but it was also really adult too in its themes. And now he's making movies for grown-ups, and they tend to seem a little more screwball-y. But once you actually peel into them, I think you mentioned Forgetting Sarah Marshall before, but even like his semi-related films, like where are some of the other ones, like Superbad, which is just like a really raunchy teenager's film, but is also kind of sweet as well. So, yeah. I can see it specifically with his stuff. And I think for the kids' films, specifically with Pixar, you can definitely see how they're trying to like raise the level of children's films too.
So, why don't we get a little bit more into that when we get to Where the Wild Things Are and figure out who exactly that movie is the target audience, or I'm sorry, who the target audience is exactly for that movie.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, why don't we move past our what we've been watching segment and into our film news segment. You can find all the news that we'll be discussing at /film.com. And the first thing we're going to be discussing is a trailer for Edge of Darkness, which is the new film directed by Martin Campbell starring Mel Gibson. I'm going to play a quick clip for it right here, and you can go to /film.com, click on trailers to find it.
Hi, Dad. I'm going to come home for a few days. I love you.
Perfect. Been waiting here forever.
You're always early.
Wait, you starting already? Come on, let's go home. Seeing someone?
Yeah. I wish you had someone.
You're my girl. Craven!
There are still a lot of unanswered questions, but it appears Detective Thomas Craven was the intended target.
This is someone armed and dangerous. What do you think I am? How's he dealing with it personally? Emma, Craven's phone. Hello?
All right, I think that's enough. So that was from Edge of Darkness, the trailer for Martin Campbell's new film. Mm-hmm. And this is a remake, an adaptation of a 1985 BBC series, and it stars Mel Gibson, as we said. And this is kind of Mel Gibson's first role in quite some time. He's also doing The Beaver with Jodie Foster.
Which has led to some of the most hilarious news article titles on the internet.
Yes. I don't know if hilarious is the word I'd use, but yes, clever.
That's called sarcasm, Dave, once again.
So what did you think of this trailer when you saw it, Stephen Tobolowsky?
I don't. It's exactly what we've been talking about. I saw the original BBC series, and I'm a huge fan of the original BBC series. The way this trailer is done, we know the entire movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing we don't know is the specifics of what goes on. Mm-hmm. We know that it's going to be a kind of revenge-type movie. We know that Mel Gibson is going to be the dad who takes on more than he can handle, but he's going to do it for his little girl. And the thing that was so amazingly compelling about the BBC series was it was like walking into a room and the trapdoor opens up under you and you start to fall. It was a father dealing with the loss of his daughter, and that's all you really knew. Mm-hmm. And he realized that he didn't know her life, and out of his mourning he wanted to get to know more about her, and he goes through her personal things, and then accidentally he finds like the thread of something that leads him into something else, and then suddenly he's in over his head, and you could not stop watching it. But it came from an emotional point of view, a real point of view. The way the trailer comes across now is it's like, oh, I've seen that before.
Right. And I think we've kind of seen how sometimes when what is this whole trend with like making BBC series into single movies? I don't understand. I mean, it always produces movies that are solid, but never as good as the original BBC series.
Because, honestly, you can't, America's sort of averse to just re-releasing BBC properties. But also, it seems like a miniseries in America, like the idea of it, is really looked down upon.
Yeah, I don't know why miniseries have fallen out of favor, but I
don't think they were ever in favor in America.
No, they were. Yeah, I mean, Roots was one of the most watched things in television history.
That's true.
So I mean, it's definitely fallen out of favor, and it makes me kind of sad because Traffic, the BBC series, is 10 times better than the Steven Soderbergh film. And I've heard State of Play, which I haven't seen the miniseries yet, is also much better than the movie. And the movie was solid, you know. So here's another example of a BBC miniseries being remade for the screen, and I'm guessing it's probably going to be pretty good, but probably something where people will say, "Oh man," but it's not as good as the series. And certainly, we all root for Martin Campbell because. You know, I really enjoy his direction. He rebooted the Bond franchise twice already. And it looks like we might need to call him back to do it a third time after Quantum of Solace.
Let's just keep him there making those movies.
Yeah,
please.
exactly.
I mean, for me, I'm definitely going to see this movie, and I'm going to see it because of him, and because of Campbell, and because I was such a fan of the BBC series, and because of Mel Gibson. But I really want to see what he does with this. I'm sure it's going to be good. It's just from that trailer, I'm going like, I don't know what their target audience is.
Yeah.
Adam, quickly,
I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. This is what we've seen a lot in movie marketing, especially movies that have like sort of unconventional themes. It's really tough sometimes for them to sell them. So.
Adam, quickly, any thoughts on the trailer?
Well, one thing, I'm really psyched to see Mel Gibson kicking ass again. That's going to be cool.
Yes.
Even as an old guy, he still seems like he's got it. So that should be exciting. And yeah, Martin Campbell's great. I think that this trailer is kind of terrible, though, for the same reason. I think, like Stephen was getting at, there seems to be a recurring trend here where they just want to put the entire story arc of the film in the trailer, and that's apparently how they're trying to sell us on it. And I wish a movie like this, I think it would have played a lot better if they did what they did with Red Eye, the trailer for that, which is make it seem more drama-based in the beginning and only reveal right at the end of the trailer what the actual film is about.
Yeah.
Because that seems like a really good, like you have, with Stephen, you were getting at, like the relationship between the father and daughter. I feel like if you emphasize that and then him trying to discover more about her, and then only at the end you find out that there seems to be a lot more going on here with whatever his daughter was dealing with, that could have been really an interesting way to sell the film. But I don't know, it seems like Hollywood's more content with just revealing every cool shot in the film, so people will say, "Oh, I want to see that." But
yeah,
I think I could mention, you guys may be aware, maybe you're not, that actually I did have my ass kicked by Mel Gibson.
Yes,
in a movie.
Yep.
And I had to do a fight scene, one of my few fight scenes ever, with Mel Gibson in Bird on a Wire. And Mel came up to me before we started shooting this scene, and we did a fist fight all day long in which he not only kicked my ass, but knocked me into a tank of piranhas where I was eaten alive by piranhas. But Mel said, "So, Stephen, have you done any of these fights in movies?" I mean, he's looking at me, and he knows the answer. You know, he was just being kind. He says, "Well, you know, if you haven't done a lot of these fights, you know, I do a lot of them. So let me give you a little bit of advice. Most important thing is don't make punching sounds with your mouth." And I go, "What?" He says, "As boys, we all grew up fighting, right? We all go, poo, 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 poo. Don't do that. Try not to do that." And we were in the middle of one take, and Mel reared back to punch me in the face, and he made the sound with his mouth. He went like, pow, when he punched me, and then he just started laughing. So, you know, it's easy to say, but not so easy to do.
Indeed. Wow, you're giving acting tips left and right for people on the podcast. That's great.
Right.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the next bit of film news. We learned this week that there's a movie project called The Tourist, which is a remake of a 2005 French thriller called Anthony Zimmer. And this new remake stars Angelina Jolie and Sam Worthington. The film follows an American tourist who, on behalf of Interpol, goes undercover to entrap a former lover who is a suspected global criminal. And apparently Jolie is the former lover and Worthington is the tourist. So I think there's a kind of an age difference there, but whatever. And what we learned is that the director of this movie is going to be Florian Henkel von Donnersmarck. A lot of you might be thinking, who the hell is Florian Henkel von Donnersmarck? Well, he was the director of the Academy Award-winning film The Lives of Others. And that was a great film. If you haven't seen it, that, actually, on the first ever podcast we ever did together, we talked about the lives of others and how awesome it was. So yeah, you guys. I mean, I think this movie beat out Pan's Labyrinth for best foreign film that year. And Steven, you can back me up on this because you probably voted for it, right? Or actually, you're not allowed to say. You're probably not allowed to say what you voted for, but
but I certainly did vote for it.
Okay,
that I could say. Oh, I'm not allowed to say it. That's what you just said.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't tell you what I voted for.
Okay, but yeah, The Lives of Others, great film, and anyone listening to this who hasn't seen it yet should definitely rent it. And I'm certainly very excited to see Von Darnersmarck tackle another film in kind of a similar vein, but it seems more like a thriller than Lives of Others.
I really wonder, like, it's surprising he hasn't been up to anything since Lives of Others.
Yeah.
That's weird. Oh, and to correct what you were saying earlier, Dave, they're pretty much the same age.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind then. I apologize for that, whatever. But in any case, this guy hasn't made that many movies in his lifetime, but Lives of Others, definitely fantastic. So I think we're all looking forward to that. And moving on, we have another story here. Saving Private Ryan screenwriter hired to pen World of Warcraft film for Sam Raimi. Now, there's a little online gaming phenomenon known as World of Warcraft. You may or may not have known World of Warcraft from the fact that it has or has not consumed the lives of your friends wholesale. But yeah, I mean, it certainly has taken the lives of many of my friends, and I don't know if I'll ever see them again. But yes, apparently they're making a movie, and Sam Raimi, the guy who directed Spider-Man and Drag Me to Hell, is going to be directing it. It's going to be based off of one of the World of Warcraft spin-off novels, and we just learned that Robert Rodat will write the movie. According to Raimi, we want to be really faithful to the game. We would have our writer, Robert Rodat, really craft an original story within that world that feels like a World of Warcraft adventure, only obviously it's very different because it's expanded and translated into the world of a motion picture. Bob Rodat was also recently tapped to write the adaptation for the Foundation trilogy for Roland Emmerich, so this guy's getting a lot of work recently. Any thoughts on the World of Warcraft film, guys? Any of you looking forward to this, or any experience with World of Warcraft in your own lives?
You know, it sounds like it's probably going to end up being like one of those Sam Raimi TV productions, and specifically I'm thinking of Hercules and Xena. So he has a lot of experience in like these medieval fantasy type things, and honestly, they are good for what they are. He's also doing Legend of the Seeker right now, which is a fantasy series and not as good as either of those. But I think we know what to expect from this if he does direct it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is right up his alley, and hopefully. I don't know. Have we seen a good video game to movie adaptation yet? I don't think so. But
no, and this is even worse because it's an MMO, and generally, like this, I know World of Warcraft supposedly has a decent storyline, but generally you don't play them for the story. You play them to, grind like hell.
Yeah.
Well, that does give them the opportunity to come up with something just completely original within that world.
Yeah.
Which is really all you need. You have a huge variety of fantasy-based elements to choose from. So it kind of gives them a lot of opportunities there. And I have faith in Sam Raimi.
I have to say that this would be one movie that I would not see, except for the fact that Sam Raimi is directing it. And I think like this is the one director you could pick out of everybody who has been able to infuse, not only is there always so much vitality in all of his films and his shots, but he always injects some sort of humor in it. I mean, there's some sort of weird, twisted humor in all of it.
Right.
But again, I mean, I would expect it to be kind of one of those video game movies. I think he's going to do a good job with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if only we can hope it ends up being better than Uwe Boll's Dungeon Siege. Really.
I also want to point out, I realized, Devindra, when you said it, that a lot of people might not understand what the term grind means in the context of World of Warcraft. Mm-hmm. It doesn't sound. It's not as dirty as it sounds. It actually just means play.
It is pretty much as dirty as it sounds, because it means you're sitting at your computer for several hours, hitting a button repeatedly to gain experience points. That's really what it is, and it gets to be pretty disgusting.
Okay. All right, well, that's fair enough. Finally, a couple of other news items this week. We've learned this week that Chris Pine may be the new Jack Ryan. Now, Chris Pine had a breakout performance this year as Captain Kirk in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek film, and it looks like he might be the new Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan, of course, a franchise that none of us are really thinking that much about after The Sum of All Fears, starring Ben Affleck as Jack Ryan, didn't really perform that well. But Stephen Tobolowsky, you've worked with Chris Pine, and what was that experience like?
I've worked with Chris a couple times, and the thing is, when I heard he was going to do Kirk in Star Trek, I was thrilled. This is the one guy who can take it to the limit. He is a terrific actor. He's a gentleman. He is handsome. He's a great guy. And one of the things that makes Chris more successful in the world than, let's say, Lindsay Lohan, as a young upcoming star, is that Chris began as like a gopher. I mean, Chris began getting like coffee and fruit shakes for people on the TV set. He actually worked his way up, doing crew jobs, all sorts of things. And then somebody noticed, hey, you're a good looking guy. Have you ever acted? And he's seen all the sides, and he has a terrific amount of respect for everybody on a movie, everybody on a crew. He's a great guy to hang with, and so I'm sure that Jack Ryan will take on a new life with him, just because everyone on the film is going to have a good time.
Mm-hmm. You got to watch Star Trek, Stephen, because he's pretty amazing in that film.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
So
I've had a hard time coming to Star Trek because of Zachary Quinto as Spock, and he was the guy who sucked my brains out in Heroes, and I hold a grudge. I do hold a grudge. I mean, after he murdered me, the two amusing things that after he murdered me in Heroes, he came up to me and said, "Dude, are you okay? I mean, are you all right?" And I go, "Zach, you didn't really kill me. You just made me unemployed."
Oh, that's even
the
worse.
Thing was only on the TV show Hero, the producers came up to me afterwards and said, "We'll see you again." We'll see you again, like they tell all the actors that when they've had their brains eaten out.
Yeah. It's like the X-Files, though. You never know. You never know when people come back.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a flashback with Bob Bishop, right?
But well, they had a thing on the casting thing looking for a 15-year-old Stephen Tobolowsky for Hero.
Yes.
So I was thinking of donning the old wig and going, "No, I'm not."
You could be like Mickey Rooney in that episode of The Simpsons where Milhouse becomes Fall Out Boy. Yeah.
Or
but I think I have to see Star Trek, but I do think that Star Trek and Jack Ryan will have a life because of Chris, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets picked for the role, I think it'll definitely bring a lot more attention to this series of films. I mean, it seems to me that Jack Ryan is in some ways like an American version of James Bond almost. Yeah. And I say that in all the positive and negative aspects of it.
Without anything, like none of the cool aspects.
Yeah, he's like James Bond with none of the cool stuff.
Yeah,
he's like the everyman. But this is a question I throw to you guys, and I felt like Jack Ryan's success was dependent on a bipolar world.
Yeah, exactly.
When you had good guys and bad guys, you can have this everyman, this Jack Ryan, working against the bad guys. But when you get to Sum of All Fears, it's like, who's really the bad guy? And you blew up Detroit with an A-bomb and a smoking machine. It's like, and it's like they destroyed the bipolar aspect of good and evil, and it made it very difficult for Jack to have a place to live.
Exactly, and it seems my point was going to be that Jack Ryan is very much a relic of like a 80s to 90s era.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
this is the Jason Bourne generation.
Yeah, this is a Jason Bourne generation, not the James Bond generation. So
yes,
yeah.
I
mean, James Bond. I feel like they did reboot James Bond well for this new age of like spies. But Jack Ryan, very different.
Yeah,
Very old.
and Jason Bourne kind of lives in the morally ambiguous United States.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
whether Jack Ryan can do that, we'll have to wait and see. But if Chris Pine gets attached, I mean, we're all going to see the movie. So
Yeah, we're all on board.
that brings us to the end of our film news segment and to our review of Where the Wild Things Are.
I'm Max. I'm an explorer. I travel by sea. I used to travel by air.
Obviously, you have no home or family.
Well, I have one of those,
But you ate them all?
no. I have no plans to eat anybody.
You are now the king, and you will be a truly great king.
Hey, King, what's your first order of business?
It's the Wild Rumpus
This is our family.
I'm Ira. I put the holes in the trees. This is Judith.
You don't really need to know me. Kind of a downer.
That's Alexander.
I hate this tree!
Well, he just wants attention. Don't give him the satisfaction. That's Douglas. I count on him for everything.
We'll take care of each other and we'll all sleep together in a real pile.
That was from the trailer of Where the Wild Things Are, the new film directed by Spike Jonze, and it was out in theaters this past Friday. This is the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com, and we're speaking tonight with actor Stephen Tobolowsky. So, Stephen, you have worked with Spike Jonze in the past, yes?
I did. I worked on the movie adaptation.
Yes.
And I had just the time of my life and got the personal phone call from Spike Jonze that I was being cut out of the film.
Yes.
But he did send me the deleted scenes. I don't know if it's on the DVD, but I do have the deleted scenes. But I had a wonderful time working with him.
And so
he's a bit of a character.
Yeah, I kind of gathered that. But yeah, so having worked with him and now you're seeing this film, and by the way, just so people know, Stephen worked with Spike on the film Adaptation, and if you go and look that up on IMDb, it says scenes deleted, unfortunately, next to your scenes, next to your name there, I should say. So Where the Wild Things Are was originally published in 1963, written by Maurice Sendak, and it's told the story in 10 sentences of Max, a boy who rebelled against his parents and decided to transport himself via his imagination to a wondrous world where gigantic monsters reigned, and he was their king. Does the film capture the wonder of Maurice Sendak's book? And, what did you think of the film overall, Stephen?
Well, first, let me take the end of your question first. And that is, I think the film, anybody's interested in movies should see the movie. In terms of a movie that is well made and unlike anything else that I've seen, I can't think of anything else I've seen for a lot of reasons. This film has a clear 3-act structure, and almost more than any other movie I've seen ever, I could understand how someone like me could say, I'm a fan of the movie, and I completely understand how somebody else could say, and I didn't follow it. I completely am on board with that school of thought. I thought Act 1, where Max is at home, the attention to detail, the jeopardy that is in every shot from the beginning of the movie. There is not the camera angles that are too close. Some of the camera angles that are when they use handheld camera. Everything about it is filled with consequence and with jeopardy. There is no wonderment of childhood. It is a world filled with emotional reality that I, as an audience, completely was on board with, and my mouth was open as to how moving Act 1 was. When he goes to the island, which is Act 2, pretty much in the movie, the entire rhythm of the movie changes. the rhythm completely changes, the way it's shot changes, and the investment, the emotional investment in the movie kind of changes too when Max is king on the island. But the middle part of the movie is kind of interesting in its own way, but it doesn't have the intensity of the beginning. And this is where I can see people lose it, and they go like, I don't get the puppets, man. I don't get the puppet part of it. But, in a way, I did. I stuck with it, and I felt it well worthwhile. For me, my kind of arbitrary demarcation of Act 3 was kind of on the island.
Oh, wait, we should say, are you going to give away a spoiler at this point, or?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so I'll shut up.
Okay, let's talk about Act 3 later. Yeah.
It does end up coming back to an emotional intensity at the end of the film. I have heard people talk about this movie in terms of, the imagination of childhood, the wonderment of childhood. I didn't get that. As I was sitting watching this movie, I realized, I don't think I've ever seen a serious movie about growing up as a boy almost ever. I mean, there are extreme examples. I'm thinking of David Lean's, the one where they're on the island, Lord of the Flies. But the intensity, the emotional intensity of being a young boy growing
There's also 400 Blows, I think, is a really good film.
Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And to me, I'm watching it, and I went like, well, we have all sorts of films, and it goes back to my thesis, where the kids are the grown-ups. You have millions of movies where the kids are oh so smart and the parents are oh so stupid. And the kids, we're going to get this divorced couple together again. And this kid, I run the computer, and so I'm going to make this thing work. Or I'm going to be the little boy in Home Alone and beat up the bad guys. We've had tons of movies like that, but we've never had the realization of what it is to be a little boy and the emotional intensity, and not only that Spike brought to life brilliantly, I think, particularly in Act 1, and the whole film was a risk, but that kid, Max Records, he was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'll hold off and let you guys jump in, but that was kind of my take on it.
And a very articulate take it was. Devindra Hardware, I feel like we should go to you next, because I think you...
Why me, Dave? I feel like I'm being singled out here.
Well, I mean, after that sort of full-throated defense of the film, I feel like we need a conflicting viewpoint here. I don't think you were quite as hot on this movie. Is that correct, Devindra?
I will say that I liked the film, and I really respect many of its technical achievements and its creative and artistic achievements. It's an amazing film, like Steven said, for people who like movies. It's just a really phenomenal piece of art. I didn't love it, though. I didn't love it just because, especially that second act, which is pretty much all of the island. I was connecting to it to a point. And, it got to a point where, the film was more concerned with the drama of the monsters, which I can understand that because they're also sort of different variations of his psyche. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff there that I don't feel really connected with the great first act of this movie. And I really wish we got to see more of the real world. I know it was trying to, stick to the book and everything and that structure where, he gets in the fight and he leaves and then he comes back. But that, what, I don't think the island sequence, despite how gorgeous it is and despite how great the production design of this film is, and Max Records is phenomenal, it didn't really connect with me. It lost me in the second half. I wish there was more real world stuff in it, but I'll talk about it more after you guys.
Adam Quigley.
I love the film. It was one of those movies where I can totally see where Devindra is coming from, because throughout the film, I was sort of just kind of weirded out by it. Actually, I was wondering where the story was going, if there actually was a story, and it was one of those movies that I walked out of it thinking what, that movie definitely captured my attention, but I kind of had to meditate on it, let it sit with me to really reflect on it. And it's then the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. And yes, on a technical level, the movie is beautiful. It's just stunning to look at in every way. But in terms of how this movie made me reflect on my childhood, I also think it's kind of a stunning achievement. And I'm actually wondering how kids are going to respond to it. It's hard for me to say whether the film is something that will actually appeal to children, because a lot of people immediately wrote it off. They're like, well, I heard people walk in screen, it's like, well, that's not a kid's film. Like, why are they even playing it like that? And on the one hand, I can see that, but on the other hand, I feel like a lot of the conflicts in this film, which is all these little, sort of these little minor issues, these minor emotional conflicts where you can just see the character Max, like he's trying to deal with all these different emotions he has. He doesn't know how to process them, and he just feels lonely and anxious. And it really is a movie about what it's like to be a kid. And I think in that way, I'm hoping that kids will actually be able to connect with those minor issues. And yes, on a sort of universal scale, like it really doesn't have much of a plot. All the conflicts are really unimportant when you get down to it. But still, as just sort of an emotional journey, I thought the film was fascinating. I really became invested in it. And yeah, on a technical level, it's just stunning. I thought the music was excellent, the way it played to Max's anxiety and just how crazy he would act, especially in like that first scene right off the bat. The movie already had me hooked. The scene with the dog.
Yeah.
And I think Spike Jonze, he completely succeeded at making the movie that he wanted to make. And yeah, it's probably something that I think fans of art films are probably going to appreciate more than families. But yeah, I hope it does find its audience, and hopefully other people will. I hope it will become a classic, personally.
Yeah. I will tell you guys this. There were about a dozen kids in my screening, and I saw it in a normal screening because I couldn't get into any of the crazy press screenings going on here. But, there were about a dozen kids, and they were really interested in it, like, as soon as they got to the island. But you could easily see them just about halfway through the movie. Like, they all lost interest. It was really weird. And I don't think, like, walking out of it, I listened to the families and the parents talking to the kids, and a lot of them were just really bored, which is sad to me. But I definitely think you're right, Adam. It's more of a reflection on childhood than something actually about sort of like living things really through the eyes of a child.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things about the sort of business side of this real quickly. The movie cost about $100 million to make, that people are estimating, and probably more to market. And I think this is really this movie is very much like a relic of another era of filmmaking, even though it hasn't been that long since they started making it. I think Spike Jonze started making this movie, 7 years ago? And it was a long and drawn-out process, and there's actually an article in the New York Times that discusses this long and drawn-out process in which /film.com people are quoted. So I'd check that out. But, yeah, I mean, the thing is that the idea that this guy, who has made 2 movies, both of which are very quirky and had a really niche audience, Being John Malkovich and Adaptation were not mainstream movies. The idea that this guy, they'd hand $100 million to this guy to let him make an unadulterated, vision of exactly what he wanted, is in today's economic climate it would be unthinkable. I think just the idea that this movie would even occur, and so I'm very grateful that Spike Jonze was actually able to do this. The movie made $30 million in its first weekend, and the word of mouth has been, I think, really mixed. So we're going to see what staying power it has. Next weekend, if it drops by a lot, then it might end up being a pretty bad financial investment on the part of Warner Brothers. But if it holds over an audience, then maybe it'll do well. But I just want to, I felt it necessary to point that out because, I think we should just treasure the fact that this movie even exists in its current form.
Yeah. There was an interesting kind of phenomenon I saw it at the Academy, which was a great place to see it because the viewing is perfect, the sound is perfect, there isn't a huge audience, there aren't a lot of kids, it was an adult audience watching this. But there was something Charles Dickens used to call in Tale of Two Cities the Lodestone Island, and it was the legend of this island, like in the French Revolution, he's talking about, where it was so magnetic that it changed all the ship's compasses and ships would wreck on it. And which is what Dickens was saying France was in the French Revolution. And I feel from the audience watching this film that there was a Lodestone Island effect happening where the audience was verbally wanting it to be, oh, those kids. That's funny. They were looking for that moment where, gosh, kids do the darndest things. And I got it, there are precious few of them. There are a couple at the beginning you could kind of twist, but like you said, the scene with the dog at the beginning is like, if that doesn't tie your stomach in knots, I don't know what will. If the whole snow scene at the beginning, again, I don't want to do any spoilers, everything was designed to tie your stomach in knots, which is one other kudo I have to throw out there, besides the spectacular understated costumes.
Can you say more what you mean by tie your stomach in knots, by the way?
I'll give you a little, and it's not a spoiler, but it gives you a very specific example. Early in the film, Max, our little hero, is distraught for real reasons and is being comforted by Catherine Keener, his mother. And he is hiding under her desk, and she is up at the computer looking down at him, and the shots are looking down at Max under the desk and looking up at her in these odd framed close-ups, if you could call them that. They're kind of broken up shots. In the shot of Max, he's there and she's trying to comfort him. He's picking at her toe, and her toe has her stockings on.
Yeah.
Not socks or shoes, but he's pulling at her stocking. And even then, that little exchange, I'm going like, he's going to tear her stockings now.
Yeah.
He's going to rip her stockings. And then she says, tell me something. And we know that she's had problems at work. And as he's talking about his day, we hear her typing. And my stomach again goes in knots that she's not really listening to this boy who so desperately needs to be listened to. Now, again, I don't want to do a spoiler as to what she's doing, but every shot has something in the background, very much like Children of Men, that will grind on you, that sets up your expectations that something else in a very normal, common way that is not cute, that is not funny, that has enormous emotional consequences that are unforeseeable and unprotectable. There's no way to protect this boy from these consequences. And my heart and soul and guts were in his hands. And Spike Jonze put him there. I mean, it is so skillfully made that way, like you say, particularly in Act 1. It's amazing. I want to bring up one kudo that doesn't usually get kudos, and that is the set dressing in Act 1 in that home is one of the most remarkable jobs. When little Max walks into his sister's room and there's all sorts of things on the wall and on her desk, I've never seen in a movie things so personal, where everything I saw I felt had weight to it, had a history to it. And I'm thinking, oh, please, God, don't let him do anything to that. Don't let him do anything to this. And I got to tell you, I was on the edge of my seat through the whole first 40 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I think the set design was and set dressing was really great, especially when you compare it with a movie like Transformers 2. Which if you remember, like Shia LaBeouf's room and his college roommate's room, like it's what it's like these executives, or not executives, but these I don't even know who's responsible for the set dressing on there, but they're like, what is it that these kids have on their walls these days? Like,
I have a better comparison, just because we're dealing with childhood.
Yeah.
The scene in Surrogates when Bruce Willis goes into his dead son's room, like it's the most generic idea of what a dead son's room would look like. Like, how can we idolize this forgotten child?
Steven, he literally picks up a catcher's mitt and stares at it and starts crying.
Yeah, like it's the worst. And what Stephen, what you were talking about with the scene that transpires in the sister's room and where the wild things are, there's something that happens. I'm not going to say what, but you don't know exactly what that means to the characters, but you can tell by the way they handle the scene that it is really emotional and important and personal. And it's something that's so simple, but you feel the weight of it. Yeah. You feel how intimate it is. Yeah. And again,
such
like
there's such a very clever callback to it later. That just like knocked me out of my seat.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of sneak. Another example, Children of Men, Michael Caine's Home, is an example where I felt every book and every CD in that home had been read. It was brilliant. Mm-hmm. If you remember that, the set dressings of things are so usually generically done that this was just so remarkable.
I think we're setting a record here for most number of times Where the Wild Things Are has been compared with Children of Men. But I think it's all,
we'll be known
good.
For.
It's all good.
Part of my thesis I was saying is I, in a way, think that this is a children's film for adults.
Yeah.
Well, I think here's the thing. I think that the Warner Brothers is positioning it as a children's film because that's what makes money. That, getting the families out to the theaters makes a lot more money. Like buying 4 tickets makes a lot more money than, buying 2 tickets or buying 1 ticket. Mm-hmm. And if you buy tickets for whole family, that, you position it that way, then you kind of try to make back your investment a little bit better. But, I don't know that, it was always intended as a children's film. I think that they're just trying to maximize the revenue out of what they have in their hands,
Uh-huh.
But here's the thing, like the book is definitely a children's book. It may be slightly mature and it may be like about a topic about an angry child that you normally don't want in kids' books, but it's a book for kids. Do you guys think that the choice to make it this way was more successful than something really aimed at kids? Because that's what I'm mulling over right now.
I mean, I think that it has given us something that we will remember for a lot longer. But I guess you didn't even like the movie to begin with. But I would say, I mean, here's
no, Dave, I liked the movie. Don't.
Okay, I apologize, but you were.
Yeah, don't like. This isn't an either or. I'm definitely in the middle with this movie.
Well, I would say that. I mean, let me just talk about a few of my thoughts on the film. I mean, I think that the movie speaks to a very specific childhood experience, right? Like, if your childhood experience was like you lived in a really like nice big mansion and your dad was home at night every night at 5 p.m. Your mom cooked dinner, and I'm not trying to be sexist. I'm just invoking sort of Frank Capra-esque visions of America here. Sure. And you had a white picket fence and a Labrador Retriever, and everything in your family was just tip top. Everything was just amazing. And you yourself were an overachieving student, and you never misbehaved. I don't know that this is a movie for you. I think this movie speaks to a very specific childhood experience, but it also speaks to a few universal elements of childhood. Elements of loneliness, elements of creativity, elements of wonder, in my opinion, elements of where imagination can become a space for wish fulfillment, and where imagination can become a space for working out your issues with life. I think it speaks to certain, like I said, universal elements. But it does speak to also a very specific kind of experience. And that's kind of where I think the divide happens. It's not like, is it a kid's movie or is it not a kid's movie? It's kind of does this speak to your personal life experience? And for a lot of people...
Can you identify with Max?
Yeah, do you identify with Max? And I think for a lot of people, they either do identify with Max or they definitely have the capacity to identify with Max.
Yeah.
And
no, Dave, I agree with you to a point, although I don't think the movie is based around those specific life experiences as much as you think. But you know what? I identified with Max. I don't identify with what all the other stuff going on in the movie,
right,
especially on the island.
Right.
Like, so I don't identify with the monsters, and they don't I know they're supposed to be an interpretation of his like mental state, but a lot of the stuff that happens there is not like clearly related. It just a lot of it just seems random.
It's not clearly related, but that's actually kind of what I really enjoyed about the movie is that it's, first of all, it's not necessarily a one-to-one relationship. It's not like, oh, this wild thing equals this part of Mac's psyche, although to some extent it does do that. Like there is a little bit of...
It does sort of do that.
Yeah, it does sort of do that, but there is a little bit of ambiguity there. But I mean, I am kind of struck with sort of the ingenuity of David Eggers and Spike Jonze here. Like, you look at a 10-sentence book like Where the Wild Things Are, and it's like, where do you go with that? You know, like, how do you make a movie that speaks to something universal? How do you make a movie that has long-lasting value? That's not just, a fun romp in the woods. Like, how do you make a movie that is going to be profound in some way? And I think they touched upon one potential method, which is make the Wild Things extensions of Mac's psyche.
Sure.
And I think I was struck with sort of the novelty of that, because that's certainly not in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you do a very generous interpretation of the book, it's and certainly if it is in the book, it's not to the level that it is here. I really liked that about the movie, that it took that turn.
Right.
And one could argue that's actually kind of one of the weaknesses of the movie, is because that element of the movie is a little obvious. I saw this movie with someone, and she remarked that it was a little bit on the nose, like how like the conflicts that the Wild Things are going through. This is a minor spoiler, but not really. The conflicts that the Wild Things are going through mirror the conflicts that Mac's going through.
Sure.
And
just to play devil's advocate on that, I feel like a lot of people are approaching the topic of the Wild Things being a reflection of what Max is going through. They approach that as if it's like this this artistic directorial decision or screenwriter decision to have that, as opposed to a sort of sensical choice to have a kid who obviously if he's going to create a world for himself and he's going to create these problems that he has to deal with in that world, it makes sense that he would deal with the problems that he's going through with it in his own life.
Sure. No, I know. I realize that, Adam, and it's sort of both. Like, artistically, you have to make that choice to follow that, but yes, it is also sort of an organic decision. But what I'm saying, and Dave, is that I don't have a problem with the fact that they did this, because it makes sense. I don't think they really handled it the best way they could once they were on the island. Like, that's the thing. They set all this up, and I love the first act of this movie, and it just doesn't, the two pieces just don't really connect. Like, a lot of stuff happens on the island, and you could chalk it up to just childlike wonder. You could chalk it up to, like, the movie doesn't need a coherent narrative because he's just, like, experiencing, his childlike imaginary sequence. But I don't know if that's a sufficient excuse.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I interpreted it. I wrote in my review, which you can read at /film.com, that I think the meandering nature of the storyline and the sort of ways it sort of takes these kind of side missions, as it were, the way the storyline kind of goes off to a side story and sort of dwells on it randomly for an extended amount of time, mirrors children's style of imaginative play, and I think that's
I totally agree with that. It had a sort of schizophrenic mood to it.
Yeah, I think it's a deliberate choice on Spike Jonze's part to make it that way.
I realize it's a deliberate choice. Yeah. I'm saying it's not a good choice.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why.
That's what I'm asking you guys. Like, you're saying, yes, he made this choice. Yes. But are you fine with that as a narrative? Like, it kept your attention throughout the entire film? Like, you weren't bothered by it?
It kept my attention throughout the entire film. I wasn't bothered by it, and I'd say that maybe to some extent I admired it more than I really got into the story. To some extent, perhaps, but I definitely admired it. I definitely think
admire it too. I definitely admire the film.
But yeah, I mean, at the same time, there are sequences of such grandeur and beauty in this film, particularly involving the Wild Things. Which, by the way, like when only a couple films in the last, let's say, year have really gotten me to say, how the hell did they do that? One of them was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and one of them was this movie, because you have these wild things, and theoretically there's people in suits walking around and they do the CGI for the face, but I mean, how do these wild things smash through trees, and how do they? I don't know. I look at it, I'm like, how do they do that? So I, the way that they tell the story, it just it kind of worked for me because I went in understanding and knowing and accepting that it's gonna be meandering. It's not gonna be like, oh, the boy's trying to go on a quest and achieve this mission. But I can see where like the disconnect would come if that doesn't work for you. Then emotionally, you probably won't be able to connect to this movie as well as you otherwise would, right?
Yeah,
so
that's pretty much what I'm saying. And the other thing is, I tweeted after I saw this movie that I can definitely see now why the hipster, hipsters in general have latched onto this movie for dear life, because it is everything that really annoys me with hipsterdom. But it's that look at nostalgia and that refusal to grow up, which is interesting and entertaining, and in this movie actually really compelling at times. But it definitely sort of loses me after a point.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of reject the idea that, well, I can understand why you would have the hipster crowd like get really into this film, but I kind of reject that this film is a hipster film itself. It's kind of like the same thing, like The Nightmare Before Christmas is not like an emo movie, but the emo crowd really loves that film.
Yeah, but I mean,
I feel like there's a huge difference. I feel like this movie has sort of a purity to it that Spike Jonze captures that nothing about it in specifically makes it a hipster film.
Well, I mean, Adam, just look at the soundtrack, like something like that. I mean, the soundtrack.
If you didn't know that Karen O did the soundtrack, then
I thought it was an interesting use of music for the film, but it is also a very deliberate choice as who you're picking as a soundtrack for this nostalgic look at childhood. That it says something.
It feels. It seems almost like you're bringing these other cultural aspects and making that what the film is.
I'm not holding as a knock against this movie, Adam. This is just
I think he's just Devindra's just commenting on like the sensibility, what he sees as the sensibilities of the movie, and I think Adam, you disagree, and I'm
not
probably
holding against the movie.
I like
plenty of movies that hipsters have latched onto.
Yeah, I'm probably somewhere in between. I don't think it's inherently hipster, but in any case, let's. I think why don't we wrap things up? Unless you guys have any thoughts on.
I have one other thought.
Yes, go ahead, please,
And
Stephen.
that is, back when I was in college, I was lucky enough to be a part of this director's colloquium with some great film and theater directors. And they came up with one theory that I think is interesting in relation to movies and plays, and I want to throw it to you guys. And that is Joe Anthony, who was an old-time actor and director, always played a gangster in those movies back in the 40s. He said, in any movie, you only have one character, and everybody else is really a force in a successful movie. It follows one character, and I've thought about that a lot. And he brought up Romeo and Juliet, that in Romeo and Juliet, Juliet is the character, and even Romeo, all the other characters act upon Juliet and lead to the tragedy at the end of it. In this film, I take a look, obviously Max is our guy, is our character. And something that you brought up about when you get to Act 2, that it disengages from Max, and suddenly the emotional life switches to the monsters and switches to them, and that seems to be where the disconnect happens when it happens, that Max then becomes the observer, he becomes the arbiter, he becomes the king, but somehow the process isn't as directly related to Max as it is in Act 1 and in Act 3. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, I think the point where he was just, watching the various interactions of these monsters and not really doing, like, he declares himself as king, but he doesn't really do much aside from, he helps them make a really cool looking fortress type thing for production design. Yeah. It is an amazing looking thing.
Yeah.
Stephen, can you reformulate your question one more time? I just didn't.
Well, it's just the idea of that there, in most films that really succeed, like Children of Men, you have Clive Owen. In this film, you have Max. You have one character. In Lord of the Rings, with all those characters, you have Frodo. It's his story, one person's story. If you get into a film and suddenly you change who the story is, you risk, you have to be enormously clever, enormously lucky. You risk disconnecting with the audience, I think. And I wondered if you guys feel that's true.
I would argue that Max in some ways does stay the main force throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And so I don't really.
And
I didn't
even,
really.
Even when some of the other Wild Things take more of a vital role in the film, like it's still Max.
Yeah,
like,
it's still
that's
exactly. It's still inextricably Max. You know, so.
And especially with Carol, James Gandolfini's character. Like,
yes.
Which, by the way, it was really cool to hear Tony Soprano smashing through a lot of things again. But I'm sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I actually just had a couple of other things I wanted to say in support of this film. I thought the way Spike Jonze handled everything, mostly from not just Max's perspective in terms of like the overall emotional side of the film, but also the way he filmed it. Whenever you see the Wild Things walking around, you really get a sense of how big these creatures are, and every time you see them smashing through objects like that, the full force of that is felt.
Yeah.
And I thought he conveyed that incredibly well. And there's something else I wanted to bring up, but I'm blanking on it. I'll come back to it if I think of it.
It's all good. But why don't we wrap things up here? And let me ask you guys, Stephen, I always like to close by asking should people see this movie? And if so, which type of crowd would you recommend it to?
I would say, yes, see the movie. I would say if you're a person who loves movies, you have a good shot of loving this. If you're a person that's going to see like a funny, quirky kid movie, I think you're in for a rough ride.
Devindra Hardwar, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely think if you appreciate the art of filmmaking or good films in general, it's definitely worth seeing in theaters. Many of the shots are just so wide and expansive that unless you have a phenomenal TV at home, your best bet is to see this in the theater and be enveloped by it. Like the scene with him on the boat and the scene with them in the desert and just approaching the giant fortress that they build are all just sort of awe-inspiring.
Breathtaking.
I would not recommend it as a kid's film. Like unless you know you're taking a kid who is particularly like mature and is into things that are a little more reflective. I don't think it really appeals to kids from what I've seen.
And for the record, there were kids in my screening that were crying at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So. Oh, I also would say really great. We didn't really talk much about the tail end of this movie, but I sort of love that final sequence between Max and his mom. That was really good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Adam Quigley.
Well, I actually remembered two other things I wanted to say. One, the other thing I was going to say about the Wild Things themselves, I really appreciated how fully realized they were as characters, because like what we were talking about, since they are sort of just these mirror images of Max and his emotional problems, there's this opportunity there to just sort of create these half-assed characters that are very simplistic. But instead, because of the voice actors they chose and the way they handled the dialogue with the characters, you don't get that. You feel like these are real characters, and I thought Spike Jonze handled that incredibly well. Also, one thing we didn't mention, we talked about how we mentioned like words like loneliness and how the movie has this kind of dark tone to it. I also found it really funny. I thought some of the humor in the film, especially in terms of how natural Max's dialogue was. We rarely ever hear kids actually talk like kids in films. Here, I thought they presented that in a really believable, funny way. Especially, like for example, like talking about getting through the cracks and like exploding heads, and just like these little moments with Max. You see his imagination come through in what he talks about, and he's like completely serious about all of it. I thought that just made, for me, like, I really identified with that, and maybe that's actually why I like the film so much in general, is because, yes, I did identify with Max as a character. I mean, kind of his situation, his home life is almost exactly like mine when I was that age. I have an older sister who kind of was doing her own thing, and I lost that connection with her, and I was living with my mom, who single mother. So, yes, I do think a lot of what you get out of the film will depend on how much you identify with him. And the question of if kids are going to appreciate this film, or if audiences period are going to enjoy the film, it's really hard to say. But on a personal level, I loved it, and I'm completely glad that Spike Jonze made the movie the way he did.
Yeah, and off of that point, Adam, the idea of being able to identify with things. I mean, for me, the two things I identified with in this movie are Max's struggle to realize that he has the potential to inflict pain on those he cares about. Like, that's something that I think he comes to terms with throughout the courses. I mean, you see it at the beginning of the movie, and that's something that he has to deal with throughout the movie. And also the idea that Carol struggles with, and also obviously Max struggles with. And again, this is all you see some of this in the trailer, you see it at the beginning of the movie, but the idea that people like Max and people like Carol, and to some degree all of us, sometimes are resistant to change. We try to hold on to things in our lives, and you know, a big component of this movie is that at the beginning of the film, Max sees somebody that's not his dad kissing his mom, and divorce is never explicitly mentioned in this movie, but it is very much sort of an undercurrent in the proceedings. But you know, this idea of letting go, and can you let go? And the movie challenges, and I think what the movie seems to indicate is that, like, if you don't let go of things, if you don't accept change, it will lead to your undoing, and that by letting go, perhaps we can find some kind of peace. And I think that that part of the movie really spoke to me. And I think the degree to which you'll enjoy this movie really depends on how much, like you said, Adam, people can relate to it, people can identify to the emotions on display. So it's hard for me to say it's recommendable for everyone, but I would say if you've listened to this conversation and it intrigues you, you should definitely see it. And I mean, I'm of the opinion that anything Spike Jonze does is, at the very least, if not good, then unique. So something worth checking out. And I think that will take us to the end of our review of Where the Wild Things Are. So before we go and wrap things up for this episode of the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com, I want to give a few credits. Music for our podcast comes courtesy of the PodSafe Network at music.podshow.com. The bands we use are Point22 at point22.com and Brad Sucks at bradsucks.net. Finally, I want to give a couple of shout-outs. First of all, a big shout-out to Emil O. from Poland and Simon R. from the UK for donating to our show. Really appreciate it, guys. And you can always donate by going to slashfilmcast.com, checking out the links at the left-hand side. You can also find all of our episodes at slashfilmcast.com. And please tell us what you thought of this show and all of our shows by emailing slashfilmcast@gmail.com. You can also call and leave a voicemail for us at 781-583-1993. And one last shout-out. Big shout-out to the Seen Unseen podcast at SCENEUNSEEN podcast.com. Great friends of the show, a great podcast, one of the seminal podcasts of all times in terms of movie podcasts. Check them out, see what they're talking about this week at SeenUnseenPodcast.com. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Slash Filmcast. I always like to ask everyone, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week? Stephen Tobolowsky.
Boy, watch Glee. I don't know if I'm on this week, but I know I'm on next week. And, you know, you never know where I'm going to crop up on that TV.
I think we could probably make like the rule of Stephen Tobolowsky, which is if you turn on your television at any time of the day, there will be a channel where you are featured.
I just saw you, Stephen, in a random Seinfeld episode from a couple of years ago. Yeah,
yeah. That's, you know, once there were 3 episodes of me in different periods of baldness on 3 different channels, and it was kind of like a Dorian Gray kind of thing of through the looking glass, as I could go back in time or forward in time. It was terrifying.
I also want to give a shout out to Stephen Tobolowsky's Birthday Party, which is the movie. You know, typically you play sort of a secondary character, but in Stephen Tobolowsky's Birthday Party, you are the star of the show. It is a sort of a great movie where you display your storytelling skills, and I'd recommend it to anyone. It's at stbpmovie.com, yes?
It's at STBP Movie, and now we're at Amazon also. And nice. Just check it out. We just came back from England, and they loved it over there, so we're thrilled. It's still cooking.
Yeah, and as I mentioned to you before the show, there are still stories that you have told in that movie that I still remember to this day very clearly. So
that's good.
Devindra Hardor, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week?
You can find me on slashfilm.com, on Twitter at twitter.com/Devindra. You can find everything else I do at devindra.org, including my new tech show.
Adam Quigley.
You can check out my weekly DVD column every Tuesday on slashfilm.com. You can check out my personal film site at alwayswatching.net. And you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/alwayswatching.
And you can find me at twitter.com/Dave Chensky. I almost mispronounced my name. That's Dave Chen, SKY, twitter.com/Dave Chensky. You can also find me at facebook.com/ChenDavid, davechen.info, and davechen.net. I actually just recorded a very lengthy discussion on blogging ethics with Masterworm from Ain't It Cool News and Devin Faraci at chud.com over at davechen.net, so check that out. And that'll be it for this episode of the Slash Filmcast. Now, guys, I think we are doing a special review next week of Antichrist. Is that correct, right? Antichrist next week? On Monday, October 26th. What do you mean? You guess so? We've talked about it.
I've crossed my legs in anticipation.
Yes. So we'll be reviewing Antichrist, which is going to be out in limited release, I think. So that'll be interesting, the new Lars von Trier film. And, I anticipate great discussion of that movie. And that brings us to the end of this episode of the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. Again, a big thanks to Stephen Tobolowsky for honoring us with his presence tonight. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you very much for having me here.
And that'll be it for tonight. Have a good night, guys.
Tick-tock, you don't stop. Stop to the tick-tock, you don't stop. Stop to the tick-tock, you don't stop. I know you're not gonna sing that song. Tick-tock, you don't stop. I know you're not gonna sing that song. Come inside, take off your coat, I'll make you feel at home. Now let's pour a glass of wine, 'cause now we're all alone. I've been waiting all night, so just let me hold you close to me. 'Cause I've been dying for you, girl, to make love to me. Let me take off all your clothes. Disconnect the phone so nobody knows. Yeah. Let me light a candle so that we can make it better. Making love until we drown. Yeah. Girl, you make me feel real good. We can do it till we both wake up. Girl, you know I'm hooked on you. And this is what you're not gonna sing that song.